Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Kleinman. I'm a third-year law student here at Cardozo Law, and I'm also one of the presidents of the Jewish Law Student Association. Thank you everybody so much for being here. This event means so much to so many of us, so we're so grateful for all the support. Whether you're in person or on Zoom today, we have a lot of people on Zoom with us today, so thank you so much. We'd also like to thank ISAF, the UN NGO, and Anti-Semitism and Promote Peace, specifically Gloria and Suzanne. It's been an honor working with them and you both all year to bring this event to life. So thank you so much. We're honored to be partnering with you today, and we look forward to continuing to collaborate with you in the future. So thank you so much. Just a few logistical items before we dive into today's session. We have some food outside. If you haven't grabbed already, feel free to come grab. We have some sandwiches, some cookies, drinks, all of that. We also ask that you hold your questions until the end of today's session. So if you're in person, you'll be able to ask your questions. If you're on Zoom, we ask that you just put them in the chat, and you're going to send them to the Cardozo account. And we'll get through all those questions at the end. We will have our Q&A moderated by Professor Michael Hertz, so thank you so much for being here today. And yeah, that's all I have. So at this time, we'd like to introduce Director Miriam Lacroix, if you would mind just saying, I know you just stepped in. Miriam is our Director of Community and Professional Development, Diversity and Inclusion. She's going to say a brief word before we dive in today. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to be brief because I don't want to take too much time away from the program. For those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Miriam Lacroix. I'm the Director of Community, Professional Development, Diversity and Inclusion, as Sarah mentioned, here at Cardozo. And I just want to begin by acknowledging the sensitivity surrounding today's program. The topic we're discussing and the presence of our speaker have generated some strong reactions and a range of perspectives within our community at Cardozo. And we recognize that for members of our community, this moment may feel especially challenging for various reasons. And the well-being and perspectives of our students are at the utmost importance to us. And so if any student would like the space to process or unpack the program today, my office, the Dean of Students, Dean Kim's office are always available. We also acknowledge that this is a law school, right? And the study and practice of law often require us to confront viewpoints and experiences that differ sharply from our own, and to engage with individuals whose perspectives, ideologies, experiences we may not share, right? So discomfort is natural, disagreement is expected, but what matters is how we handle it. So we welcome differing viewpoints and experiences and tough questions so long as they are expressed respectfully and thoughtfully. And so I trust that all participants in today's discussion, including our students, our guests, will engage with today's discussion in alignment with our code of conduct, our freedom of expression policies, which at their core are intended to protect both the free exchange of ideas and the dignity and safety of every member of our community. And I just want to include a reminder about recording and pictures, that our policy would be that only happens if everyone in attendance agrees to that, right? So keep that in mind. So I'll just close by saying thank you for attending. I want to thank our students who are here to engage respectfully in this discussion, and to thank those of you who reached out to us ahead of time to share your thoughts and concerns in such a thoughtful way. So with that, I want to hand it back over to Sarah, and get started.
Thank you so much, Director Lacroix. That was perfect. Now I'd like to invite Gloria from ISAF up to share a few words. Thank you.
Hi. I want to thank everybody that's here from ISAF and all the students that are here. I really welcome you and very happy that you're attending today. I just want to also put for the committee to end anti-Semitism and promote peace. Suzanne, our chair, will discuss very slightly a short synopsis of who we are and why we do what we do. I'd also like to thank Sarah again, Sarah Kleinman and Miriam and Lexis. I don't know where you guys are. Lexi Silverman, if you want to pick up your hand so we can see. Thank you, Lexi. And Moshe Gresson. Thank you, Moshe, for doing everything that you do. And I hope this is just the first of many, many different partnerships and many different exciting programs that we're going to have in the future. So welcome all for us.
Thank you.
In the interest of time. So I will echo those words of welcome and thank you to the committee, the law school and Director Lacroix, and all of you for coming today. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our NGO, which is an affiliate NGO member of, and the UN is totally about acronyms. So it's Congo, it's not the Congo, it's the Conference of NGOs. And so we are in consultative relationship with the UN. We were established April 27th, 2023 in Vienna. Now, the mission of ESAP is to combat anti-Semitism, bigotry, hate, and genocide, and promote peace. Our goal is to ensure fair treatment and participation of Israel and all organizations which address anti-Semitism, bigotry, hate, and genocide by the UN, its member states, and in all UN bodies, programs, and activities. So ESAP supports the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, including the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, called SDGs, with special attention to Goal 16, which is to promote just, peaceful, and inclusive societies, that is, promote inclusion and respect towards people of different ethnic origins, religions, gender, sexual orientations, or different opinions. And so I would encourage you to go to our website to learn more about us. That is www.ngo-esap.org. And so I just wanted to say a few more words. I'm a retired professor of sociology and former faculty union president, and you are future attorneys. And we know how important it is to listen carefully to different opinions, different points of view, and consider reasoned arguments. Therefore, on behalf of the ESAP, we thank you for this opportunity. Now I'm very pleased to introduce Mr. IRA KOHLER to you. He is a former IDF combat soldier in the 890 Battalion of the Paratrooper Brigade who fought in the Israeli-Hamas war. He's from Long Island, New York, and was a lone soldier. He will describe his experience from the start of October 7th war to his next 100 days in Gaza, from arriving at the Gaza Envelope, having his helicopter hit by a Hamas rocket, engaging in an intense battle on the ground, being sent straight to Kibbutz Be'eri to help save its residents, followed by more than 100 days inside the Gaza Strip. He speaks from his personal experience and not as a representative of the Israeli or American or any other government. You will probably not have heard or read about his experiences or gotten this kind of information from any other news sources. And so we thank IRA for agreeing to come here and thank you for your attention. We look forward to your questions. So welcome, IRA.
Amazing. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So first of all, I want to thank Cardoza, I want to thank ESAP for the invitation to speak here today. And I think Suzanne brought a really great point. And it's this thing that I've been sharing every presentation I've done since completing my military service about 2 years ago now. I've done this talk about 60 times, which has been kind of crazy. This is the first law school, so a little mazal tov there. But I'll say that every single time I've spoken, and I share exactly what Suzanne said, that I'm here to tell my story, my personal experience. I think we can all understand that what's happening in the Middle East and all throughout the region is very complicated. And what I'm sharing to you guys today is what happened to me, to my team on October 7th and throughout the war. And for that, I hope you guys listen, ask some good questions at the end. And with that, we'll get started. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Sounds good. So first of all, the presentation today is going to be split into 4 different parts. First, a little background, who I am, where I come from, all of that. A majority of the presentation today is going to be focused on October 7th, primarily because what happened to my team, my unit, was quite remarkable that day, and there's a lot to share, and I won't even get into a fraction of it, but I'll share as much as I could today. I'm going to talk a little bit about my time in Gaza, and then I'm going to finally conclude talking a little bit about some of my friends throughout the war and all of that. So, without further ado, as Suzanne mentioned, I'm from Long Island. Anyone here from Long Island? Okay, we got some, and we even got some from Plainview, I heard. Plainview? Where in Plainview?
I'm on Phipps.
Phipps Lane.
Phipps Lane.
It's exactly where Omer Nutra is from.
That's right.
100%. I'll talk about him later. I grew up in Plainview. grew up really in the heart of the Jewish community. Went to Jewish day school. You could see, where is it? You can see right over here. This is my graduating class. Can we also turn off the lights? Yeah. Do you want to switch the lights off? Amazing. You guys can see it better? Wow.
It's a little dark, but it's fine.
It's okay.
Yeah, that's.
Wow, perfect. Okay.
Perfect.
I live in the heart of the Jewish community. Jewish day school, then I involved in our synagogue, Jewish summer camp, and all that. I graduated from high school. I went to the University of Delaware. Any blue hands here? No, it's okay. We got to Plainview. Went to the University of Delaware. At the age of 21, in 2021, I graduated, and then I moved to Israel. I did what's called making aliyah. Literally, the word aliyah is from the Hebrew word la'alot. La'alot means to move up. And anyone who moves to Israel is given the phrase, you make aliyah, you move up to Israel. It's the idea that you're going to a holier place. And so I made aliyah in the summer of 2021. And this is a picture of myself, my brother, and my sister the day I moved to Israel. And I went to serve as a lone soldier in the IDF. A lone soldier is someone serving in the Israel Defense Forces that does not have immediate family or familial support in Israel. And there's two types of lone soldiers. A majority of lone soldiers are like me, those coming from abroad, serving in the IDF, and because my family lived here in New York and I was there in Israel, I was considered a lone soldier. And also a lone soldier could be someone who's Israeli born and raised, and then I had a connection to their family. Their family might be ultra-Orthodox and not support necessarily the fact that they're serving. Maybe they're an orphan. They lost both of their parents, and because of that, they're also considered a lone soldier. But as I mentioned, most were like me, and I went through this program called Gaza Envelope, which you can see right here. And Gaza Envelope is a program for people like me, helps us move to Israel, enlist in the IDF, kind of holds our hands throughout the entire process, creating this complex process, and makes it a lot easier for us. So I moved, like I said, in the summer of 2021, and I moved specifically to Kibbutz Be'eri. These Kibbutz Be'eri is right over here. It's in the Gaza Envelope region, which basically is the region of Israel surrounding the Gaza Strip. My kibbutz was half a mile from the Gaza border. I moved there with my entire Gorin, what it's called. It was a group of 17 of us, all from North America, all living on this kibbutz together. And because we're considered lone soldiers, you're actually given a host family. And you can see this is my family right here, with two little kids, Noah and Omer, who are 6 and 2 in this picture, and now they're 10 and 6. So they definitely keep growing. And they're obviously very cute, and they're still cute. And this is my group, 17 of us, all from North America, US and Canada, all living in Kibbutz Be'eri together, all going to enlist in the IDF. This is me, all the way on the end. And this friend, I'm just going to point out, his name is Joe. Me and him actually served in the same battalion of the same unit. Everyone else served in different areas of the IDF. So, moving forward, in January 2022, I finally enlisted in the IDF. I enlisted into the, as Suzanne mentioned, the 890th Battalion of the Paratrooper Brigade. Paratroopers are one of the infantry units, which basically means we're foot soldiers. Additionally, we learned how to jump from a plane because we're a paratrooper. And there were 4 battalions, and I was in the 890th Battalion. I went through training for 8 months. Training consists of everything from turning an ordinary civilian into a soldier, and then a soldier into what's called a lochem, or a combat soldier. During these 8 months, we learned how to hold a gun, how to shoot a gun, how to handle a weapon, right? We learned how to operate as a team, how to operate as an entire battalion going into a war if need be. We learned, as I said, how to jump out of the plane. And we also learned the values of the IDF. How are you supposed to conduct yourself as an IDF soldier? It's all very important, and all of that is conducted into 8 months. It honestly is the worst 8 months of your service. It's like hazing in a fraternity. A lot of punishments all the time. But at the end, we finish and we have our ceremony called the Beret ceremony, or in English it's the Tekes Kumta, which is the ceremony where they say you're no longer a paratrooper in training, you're now an official paratrooper in the IDF. And this, you can see a picture of me, my dad, my mom, my brother, the day of my ceremony. And after that, I started my active service. The active service, we switch between 2 things. We always are training, always preparing for the case that war could happen. And the majority of the time, we're guarding. We're sent to different areas throughout the country to protect. And this is me in one of the cities in Israel, Hebron, protecting the city. And so my service, from the time I enlisted until October 6th, 2023, was your typical IDF combat service. And obviously for the entire world, and specifically for me, my team in the IDF, October 7th changed everything. So getting now into a little bit of the crux of my presentation today is my October 7th story. And the thing with my story is that it actually doesn't begin on October 7th, but it begins the week before. And the reason is because my battalion like I said, the Agent 90th Battalion. We were on a base preparing for what is called a targad. A targad in Hebrew is a targil gedudi. It is a battalion-wide war exercise or war simulation. It's our test to see how ready are we to go into enemy territory and fight a war. It's a test so big that it happens once every 8 months. The time before that this test happened was February 2023. If you fast forward 8 months, you get to October. And the test so big that it's split into 2 weeks. The second week itself is the actual war test. We're out in the fields, we're simulating being in a war. But our battalion gets an entire week beforehand to be on our base, to chill, relax, and literally all our responsibility is preparing for the war test, preparing for that war simulation. So for the week from October 1st, that's Sunday, through Friday, October 6th, we were on a base, literally just preparing for a war simulation. And our war test was supposed to begin on October 7th itself. October 7th is Shabbat, right? It also was a Jewish holiday. It was a holiday of Simchat Torah, which is one of the big holidays in the beginning of the Jewish calendar year. Jewish holidays start in the evening and end in the evening. So in the evening of Saturday, October 7th, we were supposed to go out into the field and start this week-long test, which literally means that an entire week before, for the first time in 8 months, we were on a base for a week, literally just preparing for a war to happen without actually knowing that the war was going to happen. And what does that mean? First thing we do in the week is we go to the shooting range, we all make sure our guns work. We make sure they work properly, and then we take our guns and we clean it really, really well. You can see right over here, this is my gun in the middle. I have a special gun on my team called the Negev, which is an Israeli manufactured machine gun. The whole point was to make sure it works, make sure it's cleaned well to go into war. The next thing we do is we have meetings as a team to make sure everyone understands their different roles. And then the last thing we do is we take all of our equipment, and you can see this is my equipment right here, and this is my entire team. And we make sure everything's up to standard. Everything from our vest to our bag, like our knapsack. Helmet fits properly, our night vision is on correctly, knee pads, our vest has every little nook and cranny, our magazines and our bullets are all ready. And at the end of that week, we have what's called Mizdar Magad, which is where the commander of our entire battalion comes and checks each person's equipment individually. He says, you're ready to go for war, you're ready to go. And so when October 6th came, we were all ready. We go that night to Kabbalat Shabbat, which is the service right as Shabbat is beginning. And it's also, as I said, the holiday. So it's a holiday where you dance with Torah. It's called the Hakafot. So you're dancing with Torah. It was a normal night. And then obviously the next morning, everything changed. So where exactly are we? As you can see, this right here is the state of Israel. This is the Gaza Strip. And right over here where I'm pointing to is where our base was. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. This over here is the city of Jerusalem, the capital city of Israel. Right over here, you can see this blue area is the Dead Sea, Yam Melech. And this entire area, where there's nothing, is the Judean desert. In the middle of the Judean desert was our base, called Nedi Musa. Nedi Musa is in the middle of the desert. We make a joke that the only things there are soldiers and camels. That's the joke we say all the time. And there literally are camels walking by. I have videos on my phone of it. We're on this base preparing for war. The morning of October 7th, I have my phone by my bedside. It starts to buzz. And I pick it up, and I start scrolling, and I see alerts of incoming rockets coming into Israel. And I'm like, this is okay. You know, rockets always coming to Israel. I'm not going to pay too much of close attention. But I try and scroll to look for Kibbutz Be'eri, because I had friends there that weekend. My host family was there. I keep scrolling. I didn't see anything. I said, I need to go back to bed. I need to sleep in as late as possible. There's always rockets that come into Israel. I put my phone on silent mode, tried to go back to bed. About 15 minutes later, our commander of ours barges into the room. He gets us up quickly, and he says, there's a situation unfolding on the south. I don't know what's happening. We don't know what's happening. All we need to know right now is that we need to be ready. So we get our equipment together. And at a certain point, one of my friends pulls us over. He's like, guys, look at this. And we all gather around his phone. And this is before 7 o'clock on October 7th. He shows us one of the first videos that's circulating around of terrorists in the city of Sderot, which is a major city that 40,000 people in Israel, with terrorists in the back of this pickup truck shooting to the rooftops of buildings, shooting towards towards different apartments. And we understand at that point that it's not just rockets, that it's obviously more. But soon later, we had to hand in our phones, because we're told they're going down south. And anything I saw from that moment on was what I witnessed with my own eyes, and nothing that came from phone, the news, or anything. And so we're told then to get ourselves together and to make our way outside our base for helicopters that are going to come and bring us down towards the Gaza Envelope region. So we make our way outside, and eventually there's like 200 soldiers on our base, and 4 helicopters come. These helicopters are called Yasur helicopters. They were introduced to Israel back in the early 1970s. They were used in the Yom Kippur War in 1973. These helicopters have one purpose: transport, to bring soldiers from location A to location B. And this particular type of helicopter is supposed to fit about 30 soldiers in the back. And you can see right over here, there's a bench lining the side, another bench here, and this entire area in the middle is the IRA, literally like this. And because of the situation that day, they squeezed over 50 soldiers, which is nearly double the capacity, into the back, cramming us in literally as many people as possible with our guns and our bags, in addition to us. And you can see me right over here. We squeezed in, and next thing you know, we were off, and we were heading south. And we go, like I said, right from the Gaza, from the Judean desert towards the Gaza Envelope region. And one of the questions that I'm often asked is people say, well, Ira, we know that on October 7th, Hamas did not just enter into Israel at one point along the border. There wasn't just one community, in the Gaza Envelope that was under attack. Rather, there were many different infiltration points along the border. The whole first line of communities here touching the Gaza border were all under attack, and many communities deeper into Israel. So the question is, well, where exactly were you going? And the thing that I like about this question is it highlights 2 really important things. The first thing it highlights is obviously the extent of Hamas' attack. That it wasn't just one location, one squad of terrorists. There was thousands of terrorists at many different points in many different communities that needed support. But the second thing it shows is from the IDF perspective, the evolving situation that day. And I say that to mean that in the morning, when we were getting ready, rumors started to circulate our base that we were heading up here to the Tidat Sarah. You can see it in the top. The Tidat Sarah was one of the first communities under attack that day. Many of the first terrorists that came in on paragliders, literally paragliding over the border, came to the Tidat Sarah. And I'm hearing this, I say I know exactly where we're going. Because right over here, as you remember, is where I lived, Kibbutz Be'eri. I knew exactly, I've been to the Tidat Sarah before. We were told, we're actually going here to Kibbutz side. So we find that out, and then as we're on the helicopter flying south, we're told actually we're going here to Nachal Oz. Nachal Oz is a kibbutz, very close to the Gaza border. Right next to the kibbutz of Nachal Oz is the military outpost of Nachal Oz, both of which were under attack on October 7th, and we thought we were going there. So what happens is we're on our helicopter, right, flying south. And these details I only learned later when there were interviews done by the pilot and when there were videos about the situation put online. So the pilot, as he's flying towards Nachal Oz, he looks down the region and he notices this circulation of people down below. He turns to his co-pilot and he says, this is odd, because Israeli civilians were told that day, as terrorists were entering the country, Israeli civilians were told to go into their safe rooms, to their shelters and their houses, to close those doors, to lock the front door of the house, to close the blinds, to turn off the light, and not to open the door for anyone. So how is it that there's a circulation of people moving down below? He turns to his co-pilot, they're talking, and soon they realize that these aren't civilians. They see people with guns, they see people in the back of pickup trucks on mopeds going around the area, and they realize those are terrorists. And they say we can't land the helicopter right next to Nachal Oz where there's terrorists because we'd be under attack right away. So they decide to turn the helicopter around. They decide that we're going to be landing right over here. Right over here, this road is Route 232. A little bit further south from Route 232, you get to Kibbutz Be'eri, which I'll talk about later, which is one of the kibbutzim that was hit the hardest on October 7th. And then right over here was the Northern Music Festival site, which is where about 300-400 young people in their 20s who went to a party were killed, many more taken hostage into Gaza that day. And so Route 232 became a very known road from October 7th. Our new target, landing target, was right across the road from Kibbutz Alumin, right over here. So what happens, we're right on a helicopter flying south, and at a certain point, there's helicopter crew members in the back of the helicopter with us, with these walkie-talkie devices communicating to the cockpit, and they tell us that in a moment, we're going to land. Because there are terrorists in the area, we understood, and they say, we're going to land, we need to get all the soldiers out as quickly as possible, because the helicopter is a target. The helicopter needs to land, get the soldiers out, and leave. So we stand up, those benches on the side of the helicopter fold up literally like that. We're holding up to these handles that are scattered throughout the cabin, and moments later, we hear a huge boom, and we literally crash to the floor. And as we try to get up, the helicopter crew members scream at us to get down, stay close to the ground, because as we're on the ground, we start to hear pings hitting the side of the helicopter. We were just hit by a Hamas rocket. It hit, thankfully, the bottom of their helicopter, causing an earthquake inside. And as we try to get up, Hamas is shooting bullets that were hitting the outside exterior. And the pilot in these moments ended up being the biggest hero ever. The first thing he understood was that we were obviously hit. One of the engines of his two failed. And he understood at that moment that an emergency landing was imminent. The second thing he did, which was probably even more heroic, is a mechanism on the helicopter to just release the gas tank. And God forbid, if a bullet, even or a rocket more so, penetrates inside the gas tank, it could have caused an entire explosion. He releases the gas tank, and moments later, we land to the ground. It wasn't a crash, thankfully, and it wasn't a soft landing either, but we land on the ground. The helicopter crew members try to electronically open the back door, they fail. They try another method, they fail. They literally pull the latches up to just, like mechanic, what's it called? Manually, thanks for the word, to manually just lower the back, which basically proved the damaged state that the helicopter was in. We all take our bags out, and now there was a decision. There's terrorists about 100, 200 meters from us. We just shot a rocket, we're shooting bullets our way. Do we get out of the helicopter and engage, or do we sit inside this pressurized can? And the decision was clear. We had to get out, because the helicopter, like I mentioned earlier, was a target. And it ended up being a decision that saved our lives. As we get out of the helicopter, we take our bags, and we sprint out, and we land in this open field. It's around 11:40 a.m. As I mentioned, this is Kibbutz Be'eri, this is Route 232, and this is the open field. And right over here where that pin is approximately where the helicopter landed. And we sprint out to the field, literally taking our bags, putting them over our right shoulders, sprinting out. The terrorists themselves are along this road, as I mentioned earlier, as you can see. We put our bags in front of us on the ground, get behind them, and start to return with fire. And this goes on for about 10-15 minutes until we realize that the fire coming our way started to lessen down. And our commanders urged us to make our way down south a little bit to this forest area. And the reason is that in that open field, we were exposed. In the open field, there was no rocks to get behind, no trees, no bunks or anything to hide behind. The only thing we had were those bags. And at least in that forest, we can get behind and hide stuff. And so we eventually make our way there. And when we were here, we encountered another terrorist who was approaching us. But thankfully, he didn't pose too much of a threat to us. And then after about 20 minutes of this entire situation, literally a gun battle in this field, we were in the clear. The craziest thing that happened with all of this, and I wait till now so I could show you guys some of the pictures, is I mentioned that the decision to leave the helicopter was a life-saving decision. Moments after we leave the helicopter and we sprint out into this open field, we hear another whoosh and a huge explosion to our right. And the helicopter that we just left moments earlier was now hit again, and the entire thing blew up. And this is what it looked like. And this is the aftermath. The helicopter was destroyed completely. That second rocket didn't hit the bottom, didn't hit the top, hit literally the center body of the helicopter, causing a huge explosion. And this picture was taken several days later. There's a few things I want to point out. First of all, the elephant in the picture is obviously the helicopter that's destroyed. But also, I want you guys to look at the surrounding area. This dirt field is exactly what we were fighting in. It is the worst situation that you'd want to be in as a soldier. We always learn in Hebrew and the IDF that what's called a mechaseh, which is basically a cover. If you're in an urban setting, it's getting behind a concrete wall, it's getting behind, a corner in a building. If you're in an open area, it's about getting behind a tree, a rock, a little hill or something. This is the worst situation you want to be in. And the last thing I want to point out is if you guys can see these trees right here, these trees are actually trees that line the road, that line Route 232. Just to give you an idea of the distance between us and the terrorists we're in. It's not like they were right next to us, like, our proximity in this room. But they were about 100, 150 meters away, and definitely close enough that, they could shoot us. A few other things I want to point out is these were the gas tanks that were dropped. And if you can see here in the back is the helicopter itself. Before I move on, I want to show you guys this video. And the reason I want to show you guys this video is because it shows the exact timestamps of everything that happened in these moments and puts really this entire situation into perspective. I'm going to stop and start in different areas and point some things out.
מסוק יסעור שמתפוצץ על
I don't know.
מסוק
You can just start and stop.
יסעור שמתפוצץ על הקרקע כשהם...
Okay, so sorry for that. A few things to point out. First off, you guys look here at the timestamp. You get October 7, 2023, Saturday, 11:39 and 23 seconds. At this time, if you see in the middle of the circle right here, our helicopter is still in midair at this exact time. We're going to fast forward a little bit.
ממש רגע לפני היו בתוכו 50 לוחמים של צנחנים, נזכיר.
Right, 11:39, 23 seconds. Right now, 11:42 and 7 seconds. Under 3 minutes later. And if you look right over here, in a moment, you're going to see an explosion.
הם הובאו מנבי מוסא כדי להילחם.
Do you guys see that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I skipped over a little bit. Just to put things in perspective, at 11:39 and 23 seconds, our helicopter was literally still in midair, as you can see. Less than 3 minutes later, the helicopter landed, got every single soldier, which is 50 soldiers, plus the helicopter crew, which is about 5 people, all out. And only, and thankfully only then, did that second rocket come, hit the helicopter, and that big explosion happened. This ended up being one of the biggest miracles, I'll say, on October 7th. In this entire fight, there were only 2 people who were injured and not a single person who was killed. One of them was the pilot of the helicopter that when he was escaping, he ended up being shot in the leg. And the other one is my friend who I showed in the beginning, the tall guy next to me. He was another lone soldier from Houston, Texas. He ended up being shot through the neck and through the shoulder. He was evacuated on the spot. One of the other helicopters that came from our base towards that area, they evacuated on that helicopter, took him straight to the hospital in the center of Israel, and thankfully he was taken care of and he's now doing fine. I say this because obviously a lot of the stories that you're going to hear from October 7th are the tragedies of Nova, it's the tragedies of, Be'eri and all these other kibbutzim. If it ended up being that we were shot in this helicopter, the rocket came, and 50 of us were killed, on the spot, it would have been a story obviously everyone here would be familiar with, and thankfully I'm here to tell this story, and thankfully we were saved by the luck of God. So that's that with that. You'd probably think after that time, there wasn't that time. We were told they're heading south. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what the situation is that day. It's around 12:30. We have no idea what's happening. They say we're heading south. They say we're going to a kibbutz. And what do we think? Oh, thankfully, we're going to a gated community. Should be fine. Literally, that was our rationale at the time. We said that, kibbutz has a gate. Gate, there's protection. We're going to enter in, make sure that everything is clear in the kibbutz, and then leave. We traveled about 3 kilometers south. I'm sorry I'm using kilometers. I just like my Middle East, when I was living in Israel, kilometers, I guess miles. I wrote 1.86 miles, 3 kilometers sounds better. Went 3 kilometers south, and we ended up making it to Kibbutz Be'eri around 1 p.m. on October 7th. This is a map of Be'eri, and we enter in right over here. Up here, this is the front gate. And this is a picture that one of our commanders took, the commanders that had phones with them, snapped a picture of us entering into Be'eri on October 7th. And as we're walking towards the kibbutz, we don't know what's happening, we don't have any idea, we don't know even that Be'eri is a thing in the news. And as we walk towards the gate, we can start to hear the sounds of bullets just louder and louder. And right when we pass the gate, and you can't really see it in this picture, but I'll point it out, if you look right over here, down there were several dead bodies there, just lying there. And I say this thing that at that moment, Be'eri revealed itself as a battle zone, and is no longer as a kibbutz. It was the first moment that when we walk in and we see it on the ground, then now there's a switch that we understand, and especially with the sound of bullets coming from inside, that we're entering into something a little bit different than we might have originally expected. We walk inside the kibbutz, and eventually we make our way to this area. This area is where the children's houses are in the kibbutz. It's where the kindergartens are. In every kibbutz in Israel, the kindergartens are really the hub of the kibbutz. And especially because it's not like here where you're going to send your kids to a local preschool. In the kibbutz, a community of, anywhere between, say, 500 and 1,500, depending on the size. The children's area, the kindergartens, are where all the kids go. Beyond that, it's where the kids go during the summer for their camps. And also, all the kids of the kibbutz, no matter what age they are, up until, I think, 7th or 8th grade, go to this children's area for their after-school programming. And so we make it up to this area. We get up to this right here. This is, by the way, this picture was taken about half a year after October 7th, when I was able to go back and kind of piece together some things that happened. And so we make it on that day to right over here. We get behind this half-concrete wall that you can see right there. And right over here, you can't see that, I'll point it out. Right here, and then right over here, were 2 kindergartens. And on October 7th, we get there, we get behind this half-concrete wall, we kneel down. The only thing, I can my gun on the ledge, the only thing exposed above the ledge is my gun and my neck up. And as we get there, I see someone wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, nothing else. Slipped outside, grabbed a duffel bag, slipped back inside one of the kindergartens. And I had my scope on him, I had my finger literally on the trigger, and I hesitate a second and I don't shoot. And the reason is that moments earlier, as we were entering into Be'eri, our commander turns to us and he says, we need to be really careful. We're not entering into a foreign area. We've told the civilian population to leave, and the only ones there is us, the IDF, and the enemy that wants to fight us. We're entering into an Israeli community where at this time on October 7th, there are us, the IDF, there are obviously terrorists that have entered into Be'eri, there's the police officers, there's the kibbutz's own internal security team, and especially at now around 1:30 on October 7th, the community was still completely filled with Israeli civilians. And we were told that we need to be careful. And so I see this guy straight out with sweatpants, sneakers, and a t-shirt, grab a duffel bag, straight inside the kindergarten, and from there, him and whoever else was inside started to shoot our way behind this half-concrete wall, and we ducked down behind it. And I realized at that moment that obviously that guy that ran out was a terrorist. He obviously saw us and he shot towards us. And that moment for me was big. First of all, I started to find something in me that I really understood that I would rather have not killed a terrorist than accidentally have, shot a civilian. And I understood that if I accidentally shot a civilian at that time, it would have been something I would have never been able to live down with. But the other thing, it showed for me exactly what Hamas was doing. Almost all of the terrorists that were there that day that we saw did not have any marking that they were Hamas. There were very few with uniforms and very few with a bandana, the green bandanas that say it marks them as Hamas. A vast majority of them were wearing just civilian clothes. And the whole idea was obviously to mix in with the people there, and so that we mistake them as civilians and not as terrorists. What we learned later, what ended up happening was one of the tactics that Hamas used was they brought these huge duffel bags into Israel with extra ammunition, rockets, and all of that stuff. Essentially because as a combat soldier, you wear a vest and you wear a bag, and obviously what you carry is limited, and a duffel bag just allowed them to carry in more. So there's a duffel bag just sitting outside their building, and that's the only reason he went outside and he grabbed it and brought it back inside. We were engaged here for about an hour and a half, with terrorists that were in the area. And eventually, as the day went on, we were told that our situation now is going to change. Around 4:00 on October 7th, into Be'eri, there were many more IDF forces, including, and most importantly, many special forces from the IDF, and there were tanks that arrived. And at that moment, we were told that from this moment on, until this task is done, those units, the special forces and the tanks, will be prioritizing the terrorists and the locations that we know where they're at. And our team and many other teams' responsibility will be to rescue families and to bring them to safety outside the kibbutz. So we made our way to this house right here, you can see there. And this house became our home base. It became the base, and we rescued families from around this area, and we brought them back to this one house, and from there we protected them. We were their guard, and when we were able to, we either walked them out by foot outside the kibbutz gate, which is over here, or we take them on a van that would bring them outside. And just for reference, at this time, a lot of the fighting with the terrorists was being done in this area. So this here and this entire area was relatively clear to bring families out. So we did this for the next many hours, and you might be wondering, well, exactly how does the rescue of families work? And the reason I say that is because earlier I mentioned that families were told to go into their safe rooms, to lock the front door, to close the shelters, and to not open the door for anyone. So how is it if you're an IDF unit entering a building? You can't just knock and be like, hi, like, please open the door. It just doesn't work like that. So what we literally had to do was go to the front door of the house and break in. Either knock down the door, in 2 cases we actually climbed in through the window, and then inside the house, we made it up to the safe room door. And through the safe room, we had to communicate with the family and say, we are the IDF, we say we're the Paratrooper Brigade, we are here to rescue you. And we waited for the family to open the door, and we didn't open the door for them. And there were 2 reasons why. The first reason is that we understood that families were scared. And the reason why is because many families that we were rescued, there were houses literally right next door, where there was a family there early that morning, and that family was either killed in their house, or they were taken hostage into Gaza. And these families that were still alive knew that, they understood that, and we wanted to allow them the opportunity for them to open the door, for them to trust us, and not for us to open the door on them. And the second reason, and importantly for us, is that we didn't want as many families brought in, say, a pistol, a knife, any sort of last-ditch resort effort to use in their protection in the case a terrorist comes to kill them or to take them. And they held those. And the last thing we wanted to do was open the door for them to startle them and for them to use that against us. So we allowed them to open the door. And so I want to show you guys this video that was taken from the security footage of my team literally taking a family out. You'll see the timestamp at the bottom here is going to say 10:18 on October 7th. And you're going to see coming from here, a family walking out. You'll hear it in Hebrew because it's Hebrew words, but the visuals are really the important part of the video.
כן, כן. שיכנסו פה קבוצה של אזרחים, יאללה. כולם מוכנים. שיצאו משם לקבוצה. יאללה, בואו אחרינו.
And you can see right over here, this is inside the living room of the house. And right over here from the shelter, this family is coming out. Here's a little girl and a father, another little kid, and here's the mother right there. So from there, we were taken outside the kibbutz. And from there, we take outside the house, we take them to our house, protected them, and from there, they were taken outside the kibbutz. I entered into Kibbutz Be'eri at 1:30, as I mentioned, on October 7th. I ended up being there through Saturday, through Sunday, through Monday, and only left on Tuesday morning, October 10th. I was there for just under 3 days. I'm not going to get into everything I was doing in Be'eri because we could be here for a while. I want to just highlight a few things. October 7th was really the scary part. It was the time where we came in and were fighting terrorists very much, we saw them and it was it was very intense. October 8th was the fine days, very few terrorists remaining and a huge IDF presence. And then on Monday, October 9th, the last terrorist ended up being eliminated that Monday morning, and we spent the entire rest of the day clearing the kibbutz, checking for if there's anyone left, and only later on Monday we were able to officially confirm that earlier that day there was the last terrorist eliminated. This means that it took about 48 hours or 2 days to clear, Be'eri. This diagram you can see right here is taken from the IDF incident report that was done on Be'eri in the summer of 2024. It's a very objective diagram that kind of just shows what happened. First of all, as you guys can see, the red shaded areas are where terrorists were located. Right over here in this red shaded area is where the kindergartens were, I explained earlier. And then you can see the dots. The red dots are where a murder took place, the yellow were kidnapping, and orange where there was both. Most of the fighting, as I mentioned, was in this area of the kibbutz, and this is really where I was located throughout October 8th and even into October 9th. And just to give one final summary of Be'eri. Be'eri is one of the wealthier kibbutzim in Israel. It has what's called their main source of income is a printing press. They print many things for the country, like driver's license, stuff like that. It's a community of just over 1,000 people. And there were just over 100 people that were either killed or taken hostage on October 7th, which means that a tenth of the community was killed or taken hostage. It's a pretty crazy number, because imagine you're in a dorm of 1,000 people, like my dorm at Delaware was 500 people. If 50 of those people on that day were taken hostage or killed just like that, it would be a crazy thing. And for a community that's been around in Israel really since its inception to deal with, to deal with this is a pretty crazy blow. And it's a community that's obviously still healing and still recovering, and it's a community that also has still not returned to their home over about a year and a half later, and we'll see when they officially do. Moving on a little bit, because we don't have too much more time, I want to get into my time a little bit in Gaza. A few weeks later, we prepared for what we eventually knew was an operation in the Gaza Strip. And on November 4th of 2023, I finally entered into the Gaza Strip for the first time with my unit. We ended up going throughout the Gaza Strip, all the way from the north, from Gaza City to Sajaiya, from the central camps in Gaza, all the way to the south in Khan Yunis. Our main priority as a battalion enter into the Gaza Strip was to enter into areas where civilians were told to evacuate, to make sure that those areas were cleared of Hamas, to search for any terrorists, to then search for any terrorist infrastructure, and at the same time, search for obviously any hostages or any intelligence that could bring us closer to hostages, bring us closer to Hamas, or bring us closer to Hamas infrastructure. And that was our responsibility. And we ended up during this time finding many pretty crazy things. And I want to show you guys two videos of things that we ended up finding in Gaza. And this video is from central Gaza. We were in El Barej. El Barej is somewhere we were in mid-January 2024. We ended up entering into this apartment building in a neighborhood, like a civilian neighborhood, where the second floor and the third floor were apartments. And we entered into the first floor that looked like a warehouse. And we ended up finding these huge rockets. And this is the commander of my battalion explaining what happened. It's in Hebrew with subtitles at the bottom in English.
יחד עם כוחות הנדסה מיוחדים, מצאו פה בבית תמים, פה למעלה גרה משפחה, פה למטה בקומה הראשונה.
These are the Qassam rockets,
שיכולות להגיע לתל אביב, אפשר לראות פה.
and these are the rocket launchers.
את הכוורת הזאת של עוד רקטות ארוכות טווח, מרגמות.
And they said Margamot, which are some other rockets. These are the smaller ones right over there.
כבר נגד כוחותינו, הכל פה בתוך בית של משפחה שגרה פה למעלה.
And this ended up being a pretty crazy thing for us, because this wasn't just my unit, like my battalion or my company. This was my team that entered into this house and found this. The next day, we were listening to the radio. It was our only form of communication. We were in Gaza. We were just listening to the radio all day long. And we heard the news say, yesterday, paratroopers found this in Gaza, and we're like, wow, that's a pretty amazing thing. To hear that on the news, we're like, there's an understanding, well, this is why we're here at the end of the day. These rockets are the long ones that Hamas has. They're sent towards Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and the surrounding area, and obviously these were brought back to Israel. They were destroyed, and especially so Hamas cannot use them. The second video I want to show is from Gaza City. When we ended up being inside the neighborhood of Zaytun, and inside this neighborhood, there was a mosque. Enter into the mosque, it looked like a normal mosque, and you'll see what we found down below, and I'll explain a little bit after. Same thing with subtitles on the bottom.
אנחנו נכנסים כרגע למסגד, שבו נמצא מתחת למסגד בקומת מרתף, מחסן, אמל"ח ומעבדה של רקטות של החמאס, ומלא מטענים וחומרי חבלה וחומרי נפץ.
This is the base name of the mosque. See, this is the Hamas emblem. You can see these rockets here.
נמצאה פה מעבדה של רקטות ויכולת של החמאס, שמגייך החמאס משתמש במסגדים לרצח נשים וילדים. אפשר לראות את כמות האמל"ח הבלתי נתפסת שהאויב מחביא פה. במהלך הפשיטה בקומת המרתף מצאנו חדר קירות בלוקים שהפשיט אותנו, הוצצנו את קירות הבלוקים ובאמת גילינו מעבדה לייצור אמל"ח של החמאס ופיר שמוביל את בית התת-קרקעי. החמאס הסתיר את הפס ייצור הזה בתוך המסגד. ניתן לראות את הסימנים של הפיצוץ.
לאחר שחוצה
And right over here, look,
לראות, התגלנו שני דברים.
this is the entrance to a tunnel.
עומק משהו כמו 5 מטר, שנמצא ממש
After that, it needs to come out.
פה במרתף שלו,
Fire-
זה מה שנמצא
on that
בחלק
one.
מהפשיטה. ניתן לראות פה כל מיני עזרים יצאו אמל"ח.
פה אפשר לראות על הלוח את השרטוטים של הרקטות.
ובחדר הזה נמצא לי
You see all the weapon parts here.
חלקים שיצאו אמל"ח, יש פה פצמ"רים, נשקים טרמוברים, RPG.
And this is a pretty crazy thing for us, because we entered this mosque and the first floor, obviously looked like a mosque, and you walk downstairs and you find all of that. And to see this in person was obviously very eye-opening. And also, I see it as showing everything that you hear in the news about the IDF operating in all these civilian areas. You see firsthand that, we don't want to operate in a mosque, but obviously if Hamas is going to use a mosque for military purposes, we're going to have to go into the mosque and make sure that they can't do that anymore. And to actually walk inside to the mosque, go down these stairs and see all of it was probably one of the crazier things that I was able to witness during my time in Gaza. And also, once again, showing me the importance of being there and yeah. So before I finish here today, there's a few things I want to talk about, and especially because during this war, we know there's been a lot of people that we've lost. And for me, the way that we are able to remember these people is to tell about them and to share what they meant to me, what they meant to the world with others who may have not known them. And I first want to share with you guys about my friend Yair Litan. Yair was a member of my team who was killed. Yair was the smile of our team. We always say that, he wasn't your typical Israeli that was, rough on the outside, soft on the inside. He was soft on the outside, soft on the inside. He always had a smile. He always was just the love and light of our team. He was one of the guys with us that I wouldn't just hang out in the context of the army. If we had a weekend off, we'd hang out. And about a year beforehand, we even went to Yom Ha'atzmaut, which is Israeli Independence Day. Me, him, and another friend from the army went to a party together. Ever since he was killed, his family has shared this quote of his, and they say, his name is Yair, but that phrase literally means your smile will forever Yair, will forever light up. The word Yair literally means to light up, and his name is Yair, so it's a little bit of a play on words, but it's showing, the type of person who he is, who he was, and how his smile continues to light up our world. And it's something that me and my entire unit in the IDF will continue to miss and commemorate forever. And the other person I want to share, and someone who many of you guys have heard of, and also you said you grew up in Fitz Lane, which is right down the, I don't even know how close you guys were, which Omer Mitra grew up in Fitz Lane. Omer is someone who grew up in Long Island, grew up 5-10 minutes from me. We're childhood friends. I've known him since we were in elementary school. He also, like me, decided to move to Israel to enlist in the IDF. He decided to be in the tank unit, and then he became a commander, and then he became an officer. On the morning of October 7th, he was with his tank on the Gaza border. He was near Oz. And that morning, he was one of the first responders, the very first. His tank was on the border, and there's this iconic picture of terrorists standing on a tank, set on fire, basically putting up their muscles. It's a picture of strength for them that shows, look at what we've done. Omer was the commander of that tank. Omer and the other 3 tank members were brought into Gaza. Omer and 2 of them were killed that day and later brought home. Omer only recently, on November 2nd of this year. And one of them, Nimrod Cohen, was brought home alive this past October. Omer for me is someone who has the same story as me. We grew up together in the same community, went to the same school, went to the same synagogue, went to the same summer camp. We were family friends in the sense that we'd be at each other's houses for Shabbat dinner, once every month, once every 2 months. He was taken hostage, and the fight was to bring him home. And now that it's home, the fight is to make sure that what he brought to this world continues to stay for generations to come. And we're going to make sure we do that with him, with Yair, and with everyone else we've lost during this war. Before I enter today, I want to actually share that over the past nearly 2 years since I've completed my military service, I've been writing a book, just a memoir, about everything I went through, a personal account of my story. It gets into a lot more detail than I did here today. Really telling my entire story, everything that happened in Be'eri with my team, and in a lot of more detail of what we went through in Gaza and beyond. And so I want to share that my book is actually coming out on April 27th, so get excited. It's really exciting for me. It's a huge project. This is the cover, and if you guys remember this picture from earlier, it's a picture of my unit walking into Be'eri on October 7th. If you guys want to scan, you can basically do like you scan the QR code, and it takes you a link to put in your email, and I'll send information when it goes out for pre-sale and how to figure out more information like that. With that, I want to thank you guys all once again for coming to the invitation to speak. We're moving to questions, and I'm happy to answer questions and to help explain a little bit more. So thank you guys.
So much, Ira, for being here and sharing your story. We're going to move into our Q&A session at this point. So if you have questions in person, I'm just realizing the microphone we have is up here. So Professor Hertz, if you mind just helping us repeat the questions so everybody on Zoom can hear them as well. So if any questions, we're happy to take that. Thank you so much.
Great. Many of you know me. I'm Michael Hertz, a longtime faculty member here. And I'm just going to be moderating the Q&A part of this. We have a hard stop at 2, so I just sort of ask you to keep the questions relatively short so we have time to get to everybody. Those of you on Zoom, you can just post a question to the chat. So, questions?
Yeah.
What has your experience been adjusting to life as a civilian since completing your military service?
It's a really good question. The question was, for those on Zoom, how do you reintegrate, how have you seen your life like reintegrating to civilian life since completing that military service? I'll say it's been a process, and one of the hard things for me, and I didn't really get into any of this in my presentation, because I came to serve as a lone soldier, I was only signed up to do 2 years. Because of the war, I stayed on a little bit more in reserve duty, but all of my friends in my unit were doing more. They were doing 2 years, 8 months. So when I finished my service, I did a little bit of reserve for that 2.5 months, and then I completed my service. I was the only one on my team to finish my service. So it wasn't like a process of finishing together. I was kind of alone, stayed in Israel for a little bit, and then I made it back here to America. And I found it very, mixed, I'll say. I have an amazing community around me that has supported me. And I'm thankful to grow up in a community that has supported me. And it's a really weird thing because, one of the thoughts I say is, you come home, you're an IDF soldier at the end of the day, what would you think? At the end of the day, I could stand up here in my uniform. So I don't even need to say a word. People can look at me, half the world will look at me and say, wow, that guy's a hero. And the other world will look at me and they're like, wow, that guy's a war criminal. At the end of the day, I could do that, and I didn't even say a word from me. No one even heard a single thing I had to say. And I'm lucky to have grown up in a community that has very much supported me. And I'm also lucky to be in a community where I feel like I can talk freely about who I am and what I went through. And at the same time, I don't think that everyone understands me. Even those who support me, in everything I did, I think it's thought all the time of we get what you went through, but we don't really understand. And it's always a challenge every day, kind of coming back and going to work every day and all of that. But yeah, it's a good question.
We'd just say again to those on Zoom, I see someone has a hand up. If you could please just put your question in the chat in writing, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
What was your driving force in deciding to move to Israel after education in America? Was it your community, your family? What really pushed you to make this drastic decision?
Great question. So the question, just to repeat with people on Zoom, was what was your driving force to moving to Israel and enlisting the IDF? Was it family, communities, education, all of that? I grew up with the fabric that in my upbringing that for us we're so lucky to have Israel, and in the sense that just like every person should have a home, we as the Jewish people have been homeless for 2,000 years, and now we're finally living in a time where we have a home and how lucky we are. And I grew up immersed in Jewish life and in Israel, where I've been to Israel many times when I was younger. We brought Israel to our home. There's this program called the Shinshanim program through the Jewish Agency, where Israelis come and do a gap year, and they live at families' homes. And we would host, throughout my childhood, we would host Israelis through this program. I really grew up to this fabric inside me that, you know, this is something I had to do. And I actually write this in my book. And I say, people often expect this aha answer. It's like aha moment, where like there was some divine moment where I realized that I have to go serve in the IDF. At the end of the day, it's just a fabric of what I grew up with, what I love, who I am, and I really felt like it was important to go to serve, just like as an Israeli, and to make sure that Israel continues to be a home for generations to come. That was really my driving force. Thank you. Any questions? Any questions here?
Sorry.
So,
Just with Zoom stuff.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll keep doing in person.
I mean, Dinnick managed to do it, however Dinnick did it. But who else in the room?
Yeah.
First, hi Vish, when I was Ishim.
Right.
I think just like from talking to people in Israel and like family, friends, one of the things that like was really surprising, not surprising, but I guess really like hit me was that, you know, like a lot of people, it was really, you know, they spent like hundreds of days in Gaza. It was easier to talk about, like, as they were there. I got to see them, you know, in and out, but
Yeah.
the specifically like their experience on the day of the 7th of October, like I think for a lot of people, like, you know, like some cousins of mine, it was really hard for them to talk about, and honestly, some of them have actually yet to talk about it.
Right.
So I wondered if it was like, as you like were kind of like processing your story and, you know, preparing to share it, was it harder to talk about those first days of the war because of the shock that it was, or, you know, was it harder to unpack these kind of, and really doesn't make a difference?
Yeah. I don't know if anyone in the audience heard, so I'll kind of summarize the question. You know, she was saying how you're Israeli. Right? She spoke to me in Hebrew for the first sentence. You know, a lot of the people she knows in Israel, friends and family, have shared that, you know, speaking about the first days of the war are really hard. You know, and many of them have been in Gaza, say, for hundreds of days and are able to talk about that, but some of them still to this day can't really talk about what happened on October 7th because of how hard it is for them. So how is that for me? Have I been able to talk about October 7th? I'll say that when October 7th happened, there was a lot to unpack. And some of the, like, we couldn't really start unpacking it until we started to move forward. And I never talked about October 7th and what happened until about half a year later when I finished my service, because in the first half year of the war, I wasn't with, you know, other people. I was literally with the same people that I was, you know, in Gaza that I was with on October 7th. And because of that, we had time, you know, people were talking about going to therapy and to be able to speak about this stuff. And I have, thankfully, I truly think that the best therapy was being with my friends from the Army who were there side by side with me and to be able to unpack it together. And part of that has given me the ability to share it with other people because I kind of had the time to unpack it with the people who lived it with me. And I'll also kind of, based on that question, share that, you know, oftentimes when I talk to people in America, they say, like, wow, like, you were there in Gaza, it's crazy, whatever. I said, Gaza was crazy, but nothing compares to October 7th and the fear we felt that day. I thought that something could happen to me when I was in Gaza. I actually thought I was going to die on October 7th. There were times where there were bullets, as I mentioned, behind that concrete wall, where bullets are firing in your direction and you're hiding behind, you hear bullets coming your way, and the terrorists are, you know, across the road from you, is a really scary thing. And to have that close, you know, encounter were things that took time to unravel with other people, but because I was with my friends who went through it together, we were literally by my side when that happened, I think it made it a lot easier to talk about it afterwards. So thanks for the question.
Okay,
There's some
so
questions here.
Jake on Zoom, he's part of our board. He says, thank you for your service. Do you believe that you become more sensitized or desensitized, or neither, since October 7th, whether it be working with other people or your own emotions or just getting by day to day?
Sensitizing things. Sorry.
Yeah, because the other questions, they were making sense.
Sensitizing what sense?
Like were you desensitized or?
Like to what happened in a sense?
Sorry.
I don't really know that.
Yeah. And I guess the question is, are you so seems pretty clear you think about this every day to this day. Is that fair?
Yeah, most days.
Yeah. And do you find yourself more or less upset, calmer or less calm, PTSD or no PTSD?
I'll say that since October 13th of this year, I felt a lot better. I forgot who asked me earlier, had I been on a trip? Since someone said that their grandson or someone's in, was it you? You said that they're traveling right now?
No, he's going as a lone soldier.
No, someone else said that their grandson's in Thailand, rather. And they say something, do you do that? To be quite honest, when I finished my service, I started on October 7th a lot more and thought about the war every day, mainly because of Omer. And I physically couldn't go and like travel and do this thing. For context, Israelis, there's like a, I would call it tradition, but it's a thing that Israelis, after their military service, do what's called their Tiyul Gadol, which is their big trip. Or basically they go to the east, which is like Thailand, Vietnam, India, or a lot of them go to South America, and they, half a year, they just go and they just go to the cheapest places and they travel. And so someone asked me before, did you do that? When I finished my service, I couldn't even, like, I was too much thinking about Omer and the other hostages and what happened in the war. I'm like, I don't want to disconnect with that right now. I think right now, since the hostages came home, all the living hostages came home on October 13th, this past year. Since then, I've definitely been able to think more, but definitely until then, especially as long as we thought that Omer was living underground as a hostage alive, it was really hard to go out and to do myself. And I'll say to this day, I'm definitely getting better. Also getting into the rhythms of life. At the end of the day, we need to live on. This war is going to be with us forever. And also with phonics, it's not what happened, it's how we move forward. And so I'm trying as much as possible, for sure. Yeah, the question?
So you said immediately prior to October 7th, you were stationed in the West Bank, right?
Yeah, Never knew so.
Do you think that since, this war, October 7th and everything that happened after, that there's going to be a strategic shift in what Israel is doing, like in terms of where they're stationing troops and where their kind of priorities are for defense? Is that happening?
So I'll explain to the best of my ability, because I'm going to just refer once again what Suzanne said, that I'm obviously not a politician, I don't represent any government, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't get paid enough to do that, I'll say. But I'll just go to give some clarification for exactly where we were. Since the Oslo process in the mid to late in the mid 90s, the West Bank is split into three zones. There's Area A, Area B, and Area C. Area A is completely controlled by the Palestinian Authority, both civilian-wise and militarily. Area B is more complicated. Area B is also a smaller part of the West Bank, which is controlled civilian-wise by the Palestinian Authority and militarily by the IDF. And then Area C is controlled both civilian-wise and militarily by Israel. And so all training bases that are located in the West Bank, which includes many areas like Tibet, for example, and Tirza, where I was stationed earlier, all of those are located in Area C, which are completely Israeli controlled. I don't think that there should be a change of where those will be as far as the training bases, because those are Israeli controlled areas. As far as where the IDF is operating, I do know that after October 7th, there was a spike as far as extra reinforcement in the West Bank, because obviously if tensions are escalating in the Gaza region, it could spill over towards other regions of the country. I'm not going to comment as far as what is Israel going to do, what should Israel do, but I will say that in the area C of the West Bank is the only area where there's IDF training bases, which is different than an outpost. The training base is where we train. An outpost could be, in an area that there is Palestinians, but it's in order to, we're protecting the area, and we're there to guard, not to train, so there's a difference. But no training bases are in areas A or B. So, it's a good question. Any other questions, maybe on the Zoom? Yeah, good question.
Yeah, so I'm sure you're first of all, thank you so much for your service and for speaking with us today. I'm sure you're well aware that on the crack of dawn, October 8th, we experienced Free Palestine protests all across the country, all across the world. And from your personal experience and everything that you've seen specifically in America over the last 2 years, what is your message to those people?
And I'll say I want a free Palestine too. I want Palestinians to live in dignity at the same time. Unfortunately, right now, the Palestinian leadership both with Hamas and also unfortunately with the Palestinian Authority, are people who have said time and time again that they wish the destruction of Israel, which is the only Jewish state in the world. And we saw what happened on October 7th, and I'll tell them that we can hopefully live with dignity at the same time that, you know, Israel continues to exist free. So that's what I'll share. But it's a good question, and it's a complicated situation at the end of the day. And I'll say one of the things that I thought about a lot after October 7th is the priority for me is making sure that what I saw with my own eyes of civilians lying there dead on the ground because Hamas came in and literally butchered them are sights that me or no other person ever has to see again. And I wish there were a day that we, you know, don't need to live in that reality. But as long as the leadership of the Palestinian people believe that Israel shouldn't exist, Israel will continue to defend itself. And I always believe we should have one hand out, one hand here. One hand ready to, just like Yitzhak Rabin, he said we're going to fight terrorism as if we're not, you know, engaging in this peace process, and we're going to engage in this peace process, the Oslo peace process, as if we're not fighting terrorism. You can do both at the same time, you know, working towards a better future and also making sure that you're protected. So that's what I'll say to that. It's a good question. Yeah, another final question? I don't know if we're time to, yeah, no, that.
I really appreciate what you said about wanting different ethnicities and especially minority religions to feel safe and not be in harm's way. And I also really appreciate what you said about wanting to not kill a civilian over risking killing a civilian over killing a terrorist. And of course, when we were discussing it within regards to the kindergarten, when it comes to children civilians, that becomes a really somber and terrible subject. And unfortunately, UNICEF still reported that almost 1,000 Israeli civilian children were harmed, as well as reporting that 64,000 Palestinian civilian children were harmed. I find both of these statistics to be deeply upsetting because civilian children in either ethnicity do not deserve this, of course. And I guess I kind of wonder what led to this huge number.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not going to get into the numbers exactly because I don't know the numbers exactly. What I will say is that Israel, as far as operationally, only operates in areas where we tell the civilian population to leave. And I never entered into an area, my unit, my battalion, my brigade never entered into areas that were considered, you know, humanitarian areas during the war. And with that being said, a majority of the children who, and obviously there were children on both sides of the border that were killed, that's just a fact. And the majority of the Palestinian kids who were killed during the war were people who were, unfortunately, you know, Hamas was around the area firing towards Israel. And one of the complicated things is, well, what is Israel going to do then? If you're shooting rockets from a humanitarian camp, you know, is Israel going to just allow Palestinians to, the Hamas to continue doing that, or are they going to strike back? And the answer that Israel does is they tell the people to leave, and oftentimes they don't, and then Israel strikes. And unfortunately, there is the collateral damage that happens. It's not pretty. War is not pretty. It's the reality of the war. And hopefully, the Palestinians, and especially the children, I understand, can live under a leadership where they're, you know, it's not a terrorist organization that exploits their own lives for their terrorist goals. That's what I'll share. But I understand the concern, and it's an unfortunate situation. I completely understand. Any other questions?
We do have one more question on Zoom, which
Yes.
is what actually, when you find rockets and munitions and so on, what actually becomes of them?
So whenever we find rockets or anything, it depends on the situation. If it's like something small, we destroy the area, and if it's something bigger that needs more research, we take them back into Israel, and they're taken. The most important thing with them is that we make sure that they're not used again, or they can't be used again for military Hamas terrorist purposes. Any building that we find anything Hamas related is destroyed to make sure that Hamas cannot use that infrastructure again to harm Israeli civilians and obviously their own people as well. So, yeah.